We are just hours away from tonight's Democratic debate. CBS News will be co-hosting the debate, and our partner is the Congressional Black Caucus Institute. It's a nonprofit and nonpartisan organization that offers voter education and campaign training programs. So Vladimir Duthier is on the ground in Charleston. Vladimir, who do you have with you? Because we're going to talk more about the importance of the black vote, and you have somebody there.
Yeah, exactly right. I'm here with Vanessa Griddine-Jones. She is the executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus Institute. Thanks so much for coming out here. I know it's a little wet, I know it's a little muddy, but we're happy to have you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So let's talk about black voters. I think one of the most interesting narratives, and it hasn't been reported often enough in the mainstream news media, is how crucial black voters are to the process, not just for Democrats.
Right.
I know that sometimes that is the narrative, and you're a nonpartisan institution.
Correct.
It's not just for Democrats. It's for politics as a whole. Black voters generally come to the rescue for certain candidates who appeal to African American voters,
right,
appeal to the issues that they care about. How crucial is the vote to a politician who's running for office?
It's very crucial to the vote, especially here in South Carolina. Over 40–50% of the population here is African American, and so we want to know that we matter. And it only seems that, you know, in certain times where people come in and say, oh, the black vote is important. The black vote's always important. Right. Civic participation is always important. And so, you know, the Institute's part is to educate today's voters, and we're hoping to activate them to get out and to participate in the political process on all levels.
One of the things that we saw play out, for example, in Alabama, is Senator Doug Jones won an election in a conservative state, a state that's normally Republican. Look, the candidate that was running against him was, it wasn't going to be that hard,
right,
but the African-American vote in that specific election was crucial.
Yeah.
And you made an interesting point. You know, it's not just at around this time, it's not just every 4 years, or it's not just at the time that we're talking about national politics as the black vote matter. It matters in every election. President Barack Obama once said, you know, elections have consequences, right, and they matter, and not just in the big ones.
Yes.
So how important is it for you to get that message out to people that you just can't sit at home and hope for the best when it comes to a candidate's or an election?
We did a political training a couple of months ago in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was in the car with my Uber driver, and I was talking to him about, you know, are you a registered voter? Are there any candidates that you like? And he started saying, well, they're all the same, and it doesn't matter to me.
When you hear that, how do you feel when you hear that?
I cringed in the back seat. He's like, I know this is killing you. And I said, well, I need you to understand that government plays a role in every function of your life from birth to death. And so for you to believe that you shouldn't participate in the process, you're doing yourself a disservice and your children. So it's really critically important that we understand that we can't not be a part of the process. And even though we often feel left out of the process until around these times, we simply can't be. We're an integral part of all these processes.
So you have two narratives. One, which is you will hear a lot of older African American voters say, you know, we had parents and grandparents who fought and in some cases died to give us the privilege, the right to vote in an election. And there will be others who will say, you know, I vote and nothing changes for my station in life, so what's the point? How do you address that?
Good question, Vlad. It's hard to address it. It is one of the things that the Institute always looks at. How do you actually motivate people to get out and vote, to show them that it's critical? Because I think for the most part, people don't understand the entire process of government. They get to the elections, you know, there's a lot of hype surrounded around the elections and how important it is, but it's always, is this person better or the good versus the bad, as opposed to the actual issues that are important to them. And I think until we tap into issues that are really important and to explain, you know, how this goes from point A to point B, then we're not going to actually be able to motivate others.
So Vice President Biden has talked about South Carolina and how popular he is here, but we've seen some of that popularity erode. Some of those folks that were in the Vice President's camp, the former Vice President's camp, are now looking at Senator Bernie Sanders. It strikes me that if Vice President Biden was as popular as he believes, then it wouldn't be as difficult for him to do well in a state like South Carolina. So is your sense that he will do well in South Carolina, or has an erosion happened basically because perhaps people feel that he is not the one who can actually defeat Donald Trump?
I believe the Vice President will do well, as you said, because he did do well before, as he was with President Obama. I think the erosion is just fatigue, period, with all the candidates. You know, so much is going on with the current administration. I think it's difficult for anyone to believe that this vote will matter this time. You know, this is going to be 4 years of the same. You know, everyone's hopeful that a Democratic candidate will emerge that can address it and beat Trump. If you know, it's just difficult for people to process when we're living in the current times that we are.
Right.
The political climate has changed so much, and it continues to change so much that you don't know where you're going to land. But I think, you know, I think all of the candidates will do well here with black voters, but especially Vice President Biden.
One of the things you said that I think was interesting before we even started doing this interview on camera is, I mean, you don't make endorsements. The Institute does not make an endorsement, but you do believe that all of these candidates, and I think that's important, I guess, sometimes for folks to stress, which is that at the end of the day, they're all Democrats.
Right.
And when you're talking about the Democratic Party, there are issues that the party coalesces around.
Yes.
And so in your mind, all of those candidates, even those who've struggled, for example, former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, you think would be a viable candidate for African American voters?
I believe that if they're all focusing on the issues and they're going into the communities to address and to find out what's important to the black community and to actually develop real plans for that, I think they all could do well.
All right.
Either one of them could end up being a candidate.
All right. Vanessa, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Really interesting.
Hey, Vlad.
So there you have it, Anne-Marie.
Hey, Vlad.
Can
I ask Vanessa just one more question, and it's in regards to issues?
Sure.
I don't know if this is something that Vanessa delves into, but, you know, often when the president talks about African Americans and the African American vote, you know, he brings up sort of two things: unemployment and the criminal justice system. I'm wondering if Vanessa can tell us, you know, what are African Americans in South Carolina? What are the issues that the candidates need to know are important to black people?
African Americans are concerned about affordable housing. They're concerned about affordable health care and access to health care, concerned about education and student loan debt. We're concerned about gun control and criminal justice reform. All of these issues have greatly impacted the African American community, and especially here in South Carolina. So if the candidates focus on those topics tonight, I think they'll be doing great.
To add to what Anne-Marie is asking, I wonder then, the president has, if you recall, right after the Super Bowl, the president released an ad where he showed some of the strides that he has made in his administration with criminal justice reform. And specifically, he had a lot of African Americans in that video, I guess, attempting to show the country that there are African Americans who actually support his administration. Those strides, I mean, do you credit President Trump with getting some of those reforms through?
I do not.
You do not?
I do not. I believe each administration has come on the backs of the other administration. So most of the things that you see that have happened was because of the Obama administration. The next president, if it's not Trump, will be because of the Trump administration. So the good and the bad comes from the previous administration.
And when people appeal directly to the president for help with a family member or somebody who's incarcerated, and the president responds, is that something that you think gives hope to some people who say, look, he clearly has an inclination to hear from people, and sometimes he actually addresses the issues that they directly bring to him?
I think when you're in those situations and you're hurting and a loved one is incarcerated, you're going to seek help from wherever it is. And if you can get it, you're going to take it.
All right, Vanessa, thank you very much. Hope that answers that question, Anne-Marie.
Yeah, thank you, Vlad.